After the Orlando Magic came off an impressive 2023-24 campaign where they finished 47-35, finished as a top 5 seed in the Eastern Conference, and nearly beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in their first round playoff series, they're going to be looking to make a strong push this summer via free agency and in the trade market to improve this team, and expect Orlando to be very aggressive. I'm going to be talking about today 5 players that the Orlando Magic should target this offseason, whether that's in the trade market or through free agency, and how this Orlando Magic team can really make a deep postseason run next year. Now, if you haven't seen, I already made an article talking about the 5 players the Orlando Magic should target this offseason. I will go ahead and link to that article up above so that you guys can go ahead and check it out. And I just made a video talking about if the Orlando Magic should pursue Klay Thompson. If you guys want to go ahead and check that video out, I will go ahead and link to that video up above as well. Now, before I go ahead and start talking about the 5 players I believe Orlando should target this offseason, let's actually take a look at some of the nuances that are going on with this year's offseason date. Now, the Boston Celtics just won the NBA Finals last night as I'm recording this video. So the day after the NBA Finals is over, teams can begin negotiating with their own free agents that finished on the roster last season. So that means that the Magic have a multitude of guys that they can start negotiating with now. You have 4 guys that are unrestricted free agents, and guys like Markelle Fultz, Gary Harris, Chuma Okeke, and Goga Bitadze. You've got 3 guys that are restricted free agents in Admiral Schofield, Trevelin Queen, and Kevon Harris. You've also got Joe Ingles, $11 million, and Mo Wagner, $8 million, who have club options. And then last but not least, Jonathan Isaac's $17.4 million contract is not going to be guaranteed this season. So the Orlando Magic are projected to have $50 to $60 million in cap, and it's going to be interesting to see the moves that they are going to be making in these next couple of weeks. And let's talk about the rest of these offseason dates really quickly while we're on the topic. As of June 29th, that'll be the last day for a team or player option to be exercised, and it'll be the last day for a player to receive a qualifying offer. The very next day, June 30th, free agent negotiations can begin with players that are not on your own team as of 6 p.m. Eastern. July 1st, the free agency moratorium will begin at 12:01 a.m. Eastern. Essentially, it's a verbal agreement, nothing can be signed, and that'll last from July 1st through July 6th. Then, as of July 6th, each NBA team may sign free agents to contracts as of 12:01 p.m. Eastern. And when you talk about potential negotiations and moves that the Magic can make this offseason, take a look at what Coach Mosley had said about potentially making transactions this offseason and what it could look like for this Orlando Magic squad. He stated, well, it's got to be the right person that's going to join this group. You know, you don't want to make moves for the sake of making moves. You have a group of young men, again, that we've talked about, that pull for one another, that strive for one another, that lift each other up and empower each other to do the right thing and play the right way and defend at a high level and share the basketball. All of those things. And when you put pieces into that, you want to make sure it's pieces that fits both on and off the court. And I think Coach Mosley nailed it on the head. You don't want to get guys that are going to be a headache or guys that don't fit the culture and the scheme and the defensive identity that this Orlando Magic team desperately has built. And Jamal Mosley has helped build that culture through 3 seasons of him being here now as he enters his 4th season. Now, having said all of that, let's talk about in depth 5 players I believe the Orlando Magic should target this offseason via the trade market or through free agency. So coming in at number 5, give me Nick Claxton from the Brooklyn Nets. And to me, there is a handful of very talented big men in the free agent crop this offseason. When you talk about guys like Isaiah Hartenstein from the New York Knicks, or even a guy like Jonas Valanciunas from the New Orleans Pelicans. But to me, Nick Claxton, who just turned 25 years old in April, to me is head and shoulders the best big man out there on the open market. According to Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports, he's expected to get a big payday this offseason, more than likely from the Brooklyn Nets, but if Orlando can lure him away, I would love it. He's expected to get $80 to $100 million this summer. And take a look at his production the last 2 seasons for the Brooklyn Nets. In 147 starts over the last 2 seasons, Nick Claxton's averaged 12.3 points a game, 9.6 rebounds, 2.3 blocks per game, and if you go back to the 2022-23 season, Nick Claxton finished 5th as the Most Improved Player award in the ballot, and he was 9th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. This is a guy who is versatile on both sides of the floor. I think he fits the defensive identity for what the Orlando Magic want. Plus, we don't need a number 5 to be a stretch big man. Wendell Carter Jr. is on a very good contract. He can do that for you, and he's serviceable. I believe that Nick Claxton's a much better defender. I think he's more impactful, and I think he helps exactly what this Orlando Magic team needs, especially on the inside. I would love to bring Nick Claxton here to Orlando. Now, coming in at number 4 is a guy who's been thrown around the Orlando Magic community for a while now, and that's guard from the Atlanta Hawks, Dejounte Murray. Now, you have to take in consideration, Dejounte Murray's entering the first year of a 4-year contract, so you're not only going to have to trade capital to get him, you're also going to have to take on that contract, especially when you're looking to extend Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner from that 2021 draft class, as well as Paolo Banchero next year. All of these guys are due to get a nice hefty payday. So Dejounte Murray, back to him. I think he's a very good 3-and-D guard. He's going to help space the floor. He can help run the offense, and he has a lot of veteran leadership that he can provide to this team. Now, granted, it's not like he's made a lot of deep postseason runs, but Dejounte Murray is a very good guard who I think could help solidify that backcourt for this Orlando Magic team. Now, the last 2 seasons he spent in Atlanta, the 152 games, he's averaged 21.5 points, 5.3 rebounds, 6.2 assists, and a solid 35.5% from deep. And although defensively, Dejounte Murray is not the same all-defensive caliber wing that he was in San Antonio back in 2017-18 when he made an all-defensive second team, he's still an all-star caliber player. He's going to help make this team significantly better. And look, he was the steals champ in 2021-22 in his last season for the San Antonio Spurs. He's not only going to be a good offensive production guy in the backcourt alongside Jalen Suggs, he's still going to be a very serviceable guy at 27 years of age, who I think with the right coaching and the right personnel around him, you could really see a guy like Dejounte Murray flourish. And I know what everybody's going to say. Dejounte Murray's a headache. He's a team cancer, and him and Paolo Banchero have beef. And what I'm going to say about that is, first of all, I'm not Dejounte, I'm not Paolo. I can't speak for those two men, but what I can tell you is I've met Dejounte Murray. I've been around Paolo Banchero a million times. I can tell you damn straight, Dejounte Murray's a damn good guy. Very humble guy, and I think he's a great guy just to be around in general. And I also don't think that they have beef, okay? I think that they've squashed that. They're both from the PNW, the Pacific Northwest. I think those guys would love to play together. Plus, if Paolo and Dejounte are about winning games, which they are, I think they'll find a way to make it work. And the last thing with Dejounte Murray, let me talk about a mock trade that would potentially get Dejounte Murray to Orlando. Now, Orlando would receive Dejounte Murray, and the Atlanta Hawks would not only be getting Anfernee Black, our first-round pick last year, but also Orlando's first-round pick this year at number 18 overall, and Orlando's 2025 second-round pick. Now coming in at number 3, let's bring the hometown kid back to Central Florida. Give me Anfernee Simons, point guard for the Portland Trailblazers. And the Portland Trailblazers, they're more than likely going to be moving on from Anfernee Simons, who has 2 more years left on his deal. They've got the number 7 and 14th overall pick in this year's draft. Plus, their backcourt's looking a little bit crowded with Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson, who they drafted last year. They're probably going to be looking to move off of Anfernee Simons, not because he's not a talented player, but because he doesn't fit the timeline, and they want those reps going to Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson, who they want to build their franchise around. And despite a slight frame at 6'3" and just 180 pounds, Anfernee Simons is 24 years old with 334 NBA games under his belt, and he just put together a career-high season in points last year, averaging 22.6 points per game now that Damian Lillard was no longer there, 3.6 rebounds, and 5.5 assists per game. But last season was supposed to be the season that Anfernee Simons was supposed to be the guy for the Portland Trailblazers, and that never came into fruition because he only appeared in 46 games for the Blazers due to multiple injuries he had sustained last season, including a thumb surgery that actually sidelined him for the first 6 weeks of the season. Now, if the Magic are going to want to acquire Anfernee Simons, you're going to have to give up some capital as well, similar to what I talked about with a guy like Dejounte Murray. But he's still got 2 more years left on his deal, and I think he's going to tremendously help this backcourt in the offensive production. You can talk about him being a liability on defense because he is a terrible perimeter defender, but Jalen Suggs, an all-NBA defensive team player, is going to be able to make up for that, as well as collectively how good this defense has been and stout it is for this Orlando Magic team. And you're gonna give up some of that defense acquiring a guy like Anfernee Simons in order to get that offensive production, a guy who can run the offense and a guy who you know is going to space the floor, as he's a career 38.6% shooter from behind the arc. Now, here's a mock trade that I cooked up for Portland to send Anfernee Simons to Orlando and Orlando to send to the Portland Trailblazers. Now, Orlando would receive Anfernee Simons, and I've got Portland receiving Jet Howard, our other lottery pick last year, Orlando's 2024 first-round pick at number 18 overall, as well as Denver's 2025 first-round pick, which is top 5 protected. So, 2 first-round picks and Jet Howard. Let's bring Anfernee Simons to Orlando. Coming in at number 2, give me a pending free agent who I absolutely would love to bring to Orlando. Malik Monk, the former 6th Man of the Year runner-up this past season for the Sacramento Kings. And this is a guy who's looking for a big-time payday, and he deserves it. The Orlando Magic, we know their offensive production was not there. They were one of the best defensive teams in all of basketball. Malik Monk would come in and immediately help make life easier off the bench for Cole Anthony and the rest of that second unit. Malik Monk would be a huge upgrade to this team. When the Sacramento Kings came to Orlando this season, I had an opportunity to talk to Jamal Mosley about Malik Monk and his talents and his abilities. And listen to what Jamal Mosley stated. His ability to score, to generate quick offense, whether that's pushing the pace, stepping into his three, attacking the basket, he opened up for a lot of other guys on the floor when he's out there as well too. You already know Coach Mosley is infatuated with Malik Monk. Now, Malik Monk averaged a career high 15.4 points per game and 5.1 assists per game off the bench for the Sacramento Kings, and the Kings can offer Malik Monk a 4-year, $77.9 million max contract extension. But if the Orlando Magic want to open up their checkbooks, which I advise them to do, they can offer him a much better contract, closer to the $100 million range, which I absolutely would be willing to give a guy like Malik Monk, and a bench guy that's going to come in and, like I said, help alleviate a lot of pressure off of Cole Anthony. He can play with the first unit. You can have a lineup of guys like potentially Nick Claxton, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, and Malik Monk. That would be heaven on earth. Now, my number 1 player the Orlando Magic should target this offseason, and would be an absolute grand slam if the Orlando Magic acquired him, is going to be pending free agent Paul George, forward from the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, Paul George is 34 years of age, still playing basketball at an exceptionally high level. Obviously, a great 3-and-D guy on the wing, a great veteran mentor to a guy like Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. And think about this, Paul George has a player option that he's more than likely going to opt out of, $48.8 million. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Paul George is going to be the tipping point of free agency and how the NBA scale is going to look this offseason. Let's just think about this for a second. If Paul George opts out of his contract and let's say goes to Orlando, goes to Philadelphia, maybe back to Oklahoma City, wherever Paul George goes, James Harden's an unrestricted free agent. He's not re-signing with the Los Angeles Clippers, and I can guarantee you Kawhi Leonard, Steve Ballmer, and that organization are going to be having their hands tied to their back, wondering what the hell they're going to be doing, as they're left with an aging Kawhi Leonard who obviously cannot sustain the load for the Los Angeles Clippers all by himself. But back to Paul George, back to the Orlando Magic. George, like I said, just turned 34 years of age in May, and I think he's still playing exceptionally high-level basketball. Orlando could offer Paul George a long-term deal, somewhere north of 4 years, $200 million, and nonetheless, I think George's talent, his skill set, and his experience would be a perfect pairing for this Orlando Magic team. Now, the only reason I believe that this is unrealistic is not necessarily that Paul George wouldn't be incentivized to want to come play with a young and ascending Orlando Magic team and be in a state with no state income tax. It's the fact of the matter that the Magic might not want to pay him max dollar money when they know Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, and Paolo Banchero are all due on the books very soon. Not sure that they want to go into the luxury tax, but it'll be very interesting to see what occurs. But Magic fans, that's it for today's video. That is 5 players that I want the Orlando Magic to target this offseason, and that's guys like Dejounte Murray, Anfernee Simons, Malik Monk, Nick Claxton, and Paul George. I think any of those guys would be a home run grand slam if the Magic were somehow able to acquire them this offseason. via free agency or in the trade market. But I will say, I'm also going to be coming out with a tiers list video later this week so that you guys can go ahead and see a tier of not just really great players, but also supplemental role players that I'd like to see the Orlando Magic target this offseason. So if you guys appreciate the work and the content that I make here on YouTube, make sure that you guys go ahead and drop me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe bell to stay tuned for more Orlando Magic content that I do here on YouTube. And make sure that you guys also go ahead and follow me on my socials, especially on Twitter. I'm very active and I'm on there every single day. The link tree will be in the description down below so that you guys can go ahead and check that out. But Magic fans, thank you guys again for sticking around throughout the whole video. Brett James, aka BJ, I'm out, y'all. And like always, let's go Magic.